about how far we've come in the past 100 years. Technology, transportation, communication. We've come from horse and buggy to the electric car. 100 years ago, my grandfather, Otto Albers, had just turned 13. He was learning how to help the harvest crews by forking stooks into the combine. As he grew up, so did the world around him. His generation saw the invention of things we consider modern necessities: running water, refrigerators, electric lighting. What an era to be alive. The great improvements of the past 100 years came about as people faced the challenges of their day. People who were alive when these inventions did not exist are still with us today. We can still have a coffee and talk to people who experience the most rapid changes the world has seen. It won't be long, and that opportunity will be gone. I'm thankful for our heritage and what those who went before us accomplished. The Greek word for a craftsman is tekton. A tekton was a multi-talented craftsman. I stand in honor of the craftsmanship and character it took to bring us to where we are today. That's our tekton heritage. Just like the last generation, this generation will apply themselves to the challenges we face today. Mankind's nature is to be inventive and to make improvements. The next generation looks at what the past generation has done and says, we can do better. Encourage this generation by passing on your craft as part of our cultural heritage. Believe in them as they put their hands and minds to the challenges we face today. Who will you invest in? Who will you inspire? Touch the past, shape the future. Grandpa Otto came along at a good time, a time that would stir the passions and interests of a young, inventive mind. He tells stories where he would have to be part of a 20-man crew that would bundle up the stooks and bring them to the stationary combine thresher out in the field being powered by an old steam engine. This is what technological advancement looked like in my grandfather's young eyes. By 1925, there were only 17 combines working in the western provinces. By 1927, there were 791. By 1928, there were 4,448 combines. By 1930, there were over 9,500 combines at work in the western provinces. Grandpa started farming as a teenager with his dad near Red Deer Lake. There was always tension between Grandpa and his dad related to the new inventions that were coming out. They farmed with horses and they had an old Titan tractor. Well, as Grandpa saw new tractors being invented, he believed they needed to have a new tractor. Grandpa advocated and pushed for a new tractor. Everybody thought that he was just modern. I think there's that tension between generations even now. But I want us to recognize that that tension is part of what brings on the creativity and the inventiveness of the next generation. I've got a lot of fond memories of the blacksmith shop and spending some time with my grandpa. It's an interesting place, and as an early farmer, you had to be a businessman, you had to be an agronomist, you had to be a veterinarian, you had to be a machinist. All kinds of things landed in your lap because there was nobody else around to take care of it. Well, my grandpa was one who was particularly good at fixing equipment. And before he had a welder, he started out just with all of the equipment to do blacksmithing in the shop, and he could do a forged weld. And people would bring him equipment from all over the countryside where he lived to be able to work on it and fix it for him. And he's got lots of stories about things that he modified. He would buy a piece of equipment, but he'd modify it in his shop to make it work better. And then he invented some equipment. He was the first one north of Ponoka to have a stack mover. And he built the stack mover. He could drive out to the field, and he was so proud that he could pick up the whole stack and bring it home. Grandpa's workshop was always interesting to go and see. There was always something going on. But what really made a difference was that Grandpa took time to show an interest in me. It opened the door for my own craftsmanship and creativity and the lessons to begin.
Hey there. What you doing? Coming to check out the treasures. We're gonna make some knife blankets. We gotta get that hot. What I want to do is I want to make this piece out of that. Think we can do it? Yeah. Okay. So I want to get it really red. Just a bit more. I've got a couple of 3 in there. So I think this one's ready. Make her hot so you can make it work. All I want to do now is I just want to start shaping it. We're going to flatten it out. I'm going to get you to hold this like that. Okay, and then when I've got the iron in here, the steel in here, I want you to put this on top and I'll hammer it down, okay? And this will stretch that metal quicker. All you gotta do is hang on like that. Got her? Now you come in on this side. I will go hold of it, bring it this way. Yep, right there. Ready? Okay, put it along. Right, we'll come back this way and what I do is I flatten it out there now, so that I don't get any ridges in it. That's too hot to hold. And once it starts getting that color, we go back to the heat. Okay, we'll do that again now. When we cool it off, you don't touch that until you see water on it. Okay. Because if there's no water, it's still boiling the water off. Now, I want to show you this. This is a blemish that we made, and we should have stopped and turned it on its side and drove that back. Now, when you feel that, what do you feel? You feel how it's bending, it's rolling? Yeah. That's because I didn't lay it down while it was still hot and flattened. So we have to be careful. We can fix that. But when you look down here, don't want it rolling, you want it getting longer. Okay? So we're going to put this back in and get it hot. And we're going to be careful to make sure we don't make any blemishes. Okay? Because that makes a weak spot. What we have to do is we have to take, this is the width I want with that knife. So we've got 4 times too much steel there right now. Okay? We want it to go right to here, from there up to here, because that's how far up the cane goes in the handle. Yeah. So we're going to start squishing this down and pushing it along. Okay. Now you're going to come right out, bring it out to. Have you got a good hold? Yeah. Yep. Set it on the anvil. And what were we going to do with this one to start with? We had to flatten it down again. Okay. So I'm going to go. Hit it. Come on. Yep. Yep. Come this way. Whoa, not me. Not me. There we go. There you go. What do you see happening?
It's like squishing it down.
Yeah, so now we turn it on its side. Okay, give it a smack. Yep. Flatten her out. There you go. And again. And again. Okay, she's getting too cold. Is it still wet?
Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to touch it now. How do you, carefully. Yeah.
Still a little warm.
Cool her off.
Looks good now.
Okay, let's take a look at it. Just set these down in there so they can be cooling. Okay, what do you see now?
No like bumps or anything.
Where's the blemish? Where'd it go?
It's gone.
Where'd it go though?
It like extended.
Back into the metal. I think we'll take it to the big hammer. What you say? Gotta move you over and into the hammer. Yep. Yep. Okay, let's turn it over. Over. All right, let's go. Move it over so you're under the hammer. Okay, lay it flat. Drop it. Okay, now hit it. One more. Good. Hit it again. Good. Okay, you can put that back in the fire. I'll do that. How's it coming?
Good.
Yeah? You're keeping the edges off, yeah? Okay. Turn it over. Yeah, you take it to the edge and get a bite on it. Is that over or around? That was around. I want you to flip it. Okay? And it's getting too cold, but why I want you to flip it is so we can do the other side. Okay? Just like that. Good. Okay, put that back in. Yeah. You're getting hot. You're doing good.
When I was 14 years old, I ended up on an adventure. You see, we had a cow that had gotten away and it made its way down to the neighbor's farm. My dad and I had to go down and bring that cow back. While we were out behind our neighbor's barn, there on an old back road was a whole row of old vehicles. It was incredible. I was so excited. And there, among the old vehicles, I found an early 50s Chevy truck. I just fell in love with it. I begged my dad, "Dad, can I buy that truck?" And I got my dad's permission and I made a deal with the neighbor. I actually traded him a calf for that truck. Every day after school, I'd drive my dirt bike down and work on that truck until I got it running. I changed the carburetor, I put in new spark plugs, I changed the oil, I took off some old tires and put on some new ones. I still remember the day when I took some gas down and put it in that truck and fired it up. I got to load my dirt bike in the back and drive that truck home. The truck had no brakes. Well, when Grandpa heard that I had my first truck, he came to look it over. He had me fire it up for him, and he listened to the motor. And he said, "That motor's getting pretty old. You know, I've got an old motor in a smashed up Chevy you could have. You bring it down to my place and we'll swap the motor out." Grandpa was a busy man, but he took time to help me. And together, we took the motor out of that car and put it into the truck. Grandpa's time with me had a real impact on my life. He taught me a few things, and it was the beginning of many lessons and mechanical skills that I still use today. I was 20 years old when my grandpa passed away. He was 74. I was away at the time, so I didn't get to go to the funeral. When I think about his life, I look back and the time that I knew him, I was too self-focused. Everything was about me. And so I didn't think about Grandpa in the same way as I do now. I'd love to ask him some questions today. Check these out. Grandpa would love these. Bunch of old tractors. I'd like to ask my grandpa what advice he would give me. I'd like to ask my grandpa what his first car was. I mean, he grew up in horse and buggy era, and he saw Henry Ford start to build his first cars and release them to the public. I'd ask my grandpa what struggles he had to overcome. When did he first start farming? What does he miss about blacksmithing that now with all the technology and welders got lost? I'd ask my grandpa what the most amazing invention is that he's seen in his lifetime. I'd ask him what he thought about man landing on the moon in 1969. When I see these fields all yellow, I remember driving with Grandpa and he'd stop to check the crops. He'd go out, walk into the field about 50 yards, take a wheat stalk or a barley stalk and he'd roll it between his hands and he'd blow the chaff off of it and he'd check the heads of barley to see if it was ready to harvest yet or how full it was getting. This is my Grandpa Otto and my Grandma Clara, where they're buried. 1905 to 1982. Grandpa farmed near Red Deer Lake with his family. He got his first quarter out by Red Deer Lake, and by 21, he had sold that quarter and bought a quarter of his own north of Ponoka. They called it the Baker Place. And that was his first venture into farming on his own. And it was an opportunity for him to pursue having the kind of equipment and doing the farming the way he wanted to. And he watched all the developments come along and everything that was happening in the world. I want to say thank you to my grandfather. There have been a lot of developments in farming technology over the last 100 years. I'd like to think that my grandpa had a part in developing some of that, some of his inventions that improve farm equipment, just being here to help open up the roads and establish the infrastructure in the country so that we could be doing what we're doing today. But mostly, I want to thank my grandpa for the way he invested in my life. As long as we're here talking about heritage, there's something else I think that we need to talk about. There are times in our lives where maybe not everything in our ancestors was great. And even though they did some good things, there were parts of their lives that didn't help the next generation or hurt the next generation. There are some people that you don't even have family to speak of, or you don't know your family. I know that one of the stories in my family is that with Grandpa's hard work ethic, he was very demanding, and he taught my father that hard work ethic. But what it meant is that work always came first, and sometimes relationships suffered because of it. My grandfather didn't know how to approve of his children. His father never gave him approval, and so he didn't know how to give approval to my dad, and my dad didn't know how to give approval for me. It can leave some wounds, it can leave some baggage. People have a hard time moving on. And so when I talk about heritage and being thankful for my grandfather, I'm well aware that not everything in his life was stellar, and not everything in someone else's family heritage is great. And amidst all the good that gets handed down, sometimes there's hurt. And I'll call that hurt the red balloons. Those hurts can hold a person back because they come with debts that we collect, something that we expected from somebody, but they didn't come through. And we can go around through life carrying those debts and burdened by them. And I've discovered a great exchange program. I can release them through forgiveness. And when I do, God helps me with that debt. He'll even give me what I didn't get. These black balloons represent our DNA. We definitely don't get to choose our DNA. There's wonderful things that we get from our DNA. Like my dad always said, I got Grandpa's creativity. But the other thing that I got that hair gene that makes your hair go bald. Now, when we think about what we received from our ancestors, we can take responsibility for what we got, even in our DNA, and decide what we do with it in our generation, the good and the bad. So that leaves us with the gold balloons. The gold balloons are those valuable things that we received from our ancestors. And we get to take those and do something with them in our lives. Like I received creativity, I received inspiration, I received confidence and courage from my grandpa, from the time he spent helping me. And I get to decide what I do with that in my life.
And an interesting thing happens when we've made that exchange program with God. It gives him the opportunity to add something else to our lives.